Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our January MAC meeting. Sharon, I doubt we have enough people on yet to approve our meeting minutes.
No, you're correct. We do not. So a few more, I'm sure, will join in the next moment or two.
Okay, so we'll give just a few more minutes for people to join the call.
And also, if you are a committee member, would you please add your name into the chat? And if you are a committee member on the phone or a committee member that doesn't show your name in the list of attendees, would you please either unmute or write in the chat your name so we know that you are here. Thank you.
All right, so we'll give a few minutes for everybody to get on for our meeting minute approval. Do we have Carlos on the line?
Yes, that's me right here.
Okay, great. All right, well, we'd like to introduce Carlos Flores to the members of the committee and the public who participate in the MAC meeting. Carlos has been appointed as a new member to the MAC, and we'd like to extend a welcome to him. And Carlos, if you would like, we'll just give you a few minutes to introduce yourself to the members of the MAC and the public.
Sure. Yeah, sure. It's nice. It's nice to meet you guys. It's nice to be part of this committee. Thanks for the opportunity. My name is Carlos Flores. I work at Holy Cross Ministries, a nonprofit here in we're based here in Salt Lake, but we help pretty much the whole state. We help people with, we got an immigration department there. We got the health outreach, which is the one that I manage. We have a department, an education department over there too. Let's see, I went to the U. I got my bachelor's in political science. I applied for the master's in social work. I am waiting to hear back from them, hopefully soon, by next month. I have two daughters, 15 and 7. And yeah, and it's just nice to be here. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Well, great. Thank you for the introduction, Carlos, and we extend a heartfelt welcome to you and look forward to working with you on the committee going forward and hearing your perspective and insights that will help influence Medicaid policy making and implementation to better the impact on the community that we all represent. Okay, Sharon, do we think we have enough members to consider committee action on the minutes?
Yes, we do. We do have a quorum, so you can proceed, Michael. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Well, we do have the December MAC meeting minutes summarized and had been distributed prior to the meeting for the members of the committee to review. So I will entertain a motion for approval.
Motion to approve the minutes from December 15th, 2022.
Thank you, Rachel. Do we have a second? Please.
This is Davis Moore. I'll second it.
All right. Thank you, Davis. All right. And then instead of going through and doing a roll call vote, I'll just ask if there are anyone who's opposing adopting the minutes. Okay. If not, then we will consider those unanimously approved. Thank you. All right. Our first item on the agenda after taking care of our first welcome items is to have a presentation on Open and Public Meetings Act by Stephanie Saperstein, who is an Assistant Attorney General who advises the Utah Department of Health and Human Services. So Stephanie, we'll turn the time over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good to meet I did the training last year. It's good to see the usual members here today, and excited to help train on this very important issue and advise regarding the Open Meetings Act in the state of Utah. So let's get started. This should not take very long. It's pretty simple. The Open and Public Meetings is an act adopted in the Utah Code in Title 52, Chapter 4. The public policy of the legislature is that the state's business should be conducted in public. And so it requires that meetings such as this be open and conducted in public. Utah Code Section 52-4-104 requires that members of a public body be trained annually on the requirements of the Open and Public Meetings Act. It has been determined that the MAC is a public body as defined in the Act and is therefore subject to the Act. As a public body, the MAC is required to provide public notice of a meeting at least 24 hours before the meeting. The notice must include the date, time, and place, include an agenda that specifies the topics you will consider. The notice must be posted on the Utah Public Notice website at the location of the meeting and provided to a newspaper or local media correspondent. Excuse me. A public body may discuss an item raised by the public that is not listed on the agenda, but it may not take final action on the item at that meeting if it's not posted on that agenda. The recording of the public body must record. Here it is. As required by the Act, the MAC follows Administrative Rule R380-42 in conducting an open administrative rule and open a meeting electronically. Per the administrative rule, if the MAC meets electronically, the designated anchor location for the meeting is the Cannon Health Building, located at 288 North, 1460 West, Salt Lake City, Utah. A quorum is not required to be physically present at that anchor location as long as they're present at the meeting. Also, this rule allows the person presiding at the MAC meeting to restrict the number of separate connections for members of the public body that are allowed for an electronic meeting based upon available equipment capability. The MAC must keep written minutes and a recording of all meetings unless the meeting is at a site visit or a traveling tour where no vote or action is going to be taken. If the MAC takes comments from the public who are not members of the MAC during the meeting, the commenter must first be recognized by the presiding officer. That would be Mr. Hales. The commenter's name and the substance of their comments and brief must be included in the meeting minutes. The recording of the open portion of the meeting must be posted on the Utah Public Notice website within 3 business days after the meeting. The MAC must make a draft of your minutes and available to the public within 30 days after the meeting. And then, as you've seen earlier, just a few minutes earlier, the approved minutes and any public material drafted at the meeting must also be posted on the Public Notice website within 3 days after their approval. That means that this committee must post the hearing minutes from December that it just approved on the public website within 3 days from today. Closed meetings. Now, you may close a meeting by a two-thirds vote of the quorum present for discussion of the following, but only the following: a person's character, competence, or health, a pending or imminent litigation, matters related to the sale or acquisition of real property, the deployment of security personnel, devices, or systems, and deliberation and decision-making involving the procurement process. Because the MAC is mainly an advisory body, it is highly unlikely that any of these things will occur that will allow the MAC to legally close any discussion in its meetings. It could happen. It's just unlikely. If you vote to, so we must talk a little bit about how you do close a meeting, just in the real rare chance that you can. If you vote to close a meeting, you must announce and record in the minutes the reason for closing the meeting. You may not take a vote in a closed meeting except to vote to end the closed portion and return to the open meeting. You can have emergency meetings. Again, unlikely since this is an advisory committee. You can hold the emergency meeting, which does not require the 24-hour notice, if unforeseen circumstances arise that require you to consider matters of an emergency or urgent nature. However, you must first attempt to notify all MAC members and seek approval of a majority of your members before you hold that meeting. One of the things we have to do in our annual training is update you on any changes that were made in the last legislative session. The last legislative session here to make changes to the Open Meetings Act was in the 2022 general session of the Utah State Legislature. Pursuant to House Bill 22 from that session, the committee must now do the following. Be aware of and follow the department rule that will establish the conditions under which a remote member is included in calculating a quorum for electronic meetings held after December 2022. That means those members who are on the phone will need to start counting them. I can tell you that the Department of Health and Human Services is in the process of making a rule that will provide guidance to all statutory committees that are handled by the department that will regulate this all the way through. The rulemaking has started. There's not a rule in place, but there will be soon. And I will notify the chair of this committee so that there is then notice of how that needs to be conducted and how any votes must be taken if there is such a vote. Other changes during the 2022 session is that the MAC is now must determine whether you are statutorily authorized to allow a MAC member to act by proxy, and if so, establish the conditions under which that member may vote or take action by proxy. Otherwise, meaning if the MAC is conducting an electronic meeting, it may not allow a member to vote by proxy. The member must be present in one way or another in order to vote. And finally, except for a unanimous vote, you must always vote by roll call in an electronic meeting. That's it. For your training for this year, we go through it always very close. Lots of you are familiar with this process. And again, I want to repeat that the most important piece of this is to make sure that you publish your agenda and your meetings and your handouts 24 hours ahead of time, that you may discuss something that's not on the agenda, but you cannot take a vote on the agenda unless that discussion and vote action item is on your agenda. And again, highly unlikely, make sure you comply with the statutory requirements if you're going to close a meeting. Are there any questions? Okay, well, it's an important act to do the public's business openly and transparently. A little bit dry, but it's important for the citizens of Utah to comply with this statute. So good luck. Have a good look. Have a good year, and I am sure I will be back here next year. Hopefully.
Thank you, Stephanie. We appreciate your annual training to keep us in compliance. All right. Next item on our agenda is to review and vote on to propose changes to our MAC bylaws. And since we're going through this and just generally reviewing our Open and Public Meetings Act, we thought it would be helpful to actually talk through, again, the purpose of the MAC, just as an overview and perspective for all of the committee members. So as we go through this, I'll just kind of talk through the changes, but also try and highlight some of the main points of focus that the MAC is trying to bring to the department in terms of perspective and our purpose for being here. Now, the main reason for the changes to the bylaws that are being proposed today are because of organizational changes that have happened in the merger with the Department of Health and the Department of Human Services, now known as the Utah Department of Health and Human Services. So as you review, or maybe had a chance to review the bylaw change proposals, most of those can be considered just part of the administrative changes required to become current with the governmental organizational structure. So in Article 1, we just have the location. So instead of it being the Department of Health and the Medicaid division, it's the Department of Health and Human Services, and the Division of Integrated Healthcare is the first change there. As we go to Article 2, just briefly, there aren't really any changes in this section, but I do think it is important for the members of the MAC to know that this committee is mandated on the state of Utah by federal statute and federal regulation. Laid out here is kind of the reason for having a MAC and the authority that we have committee participation, trying to advise the department on policy making in general and bring perspective to their policy making authority. And I just think people need to have that general overview as to the why the MAC exists. Okay, moving into Article 3. We have small change here in terms of previously the Department of Health Executive Director was the nominating member of new MAC members, and that has been changed to the Deputy Director in the new organization, the Deputy Director over Healthcare Administration within the Department of Health and Human Services. So small change there for reality implementation. It's the same person who was making the appointments before the departments were combined, and that's currently Nathan Checketts. Okay, here in Article 4, the purpose of the committee, I think this kind of starts the real crux of what we are here to accomplish from our varying perspectives in MAC, and to formulate, recommend policies, analyze and review services provided to recipients under the Medicaid program, look to improve and oversee quality and quantity of services, and provide two-way channel of communication between all of us and the Division of Integrated Healthcare that administers the Medicaid program, and to make sure that we facilitate understanding as these services are rendered, and to plan for future medical assistance programs or discontinuing existing programs that we don't think are effective. We are advisory, so we don't make recommendations that the department has to adopt, but if it chooses not to adopt recommendations that we make, then it does owe us an obligation that they'll highlight later in the document about explaining the why they choose not to adopt any of our recommendations. Okay, Article 5, in terms of recommendations, each member of the MAC, whether from the provider community who represents a specific group of providers or from the constituencies representing Medicaid enrolled individuals, represents a different perspective. And we want to make sure that our participation in the MAC has broad representation so that we can bring all of those community opinions and perspectives to the policy-making process and as best we can to inform the Medicaid agency on their role in implementing policy and programs. We have the responsibility to study the programs and services and analyze them as best we can with the information provided. And again, try and provide meaningful and insightful perspective and feedback to the Medicaid administrative team as they look to implement these programs. Okay, let's move down to the next section. We won't spend a lot of time on the committee composition, but in general, half of the MAC is represented of providers and the other half, slight majority, actually is represented of individuals representing enrollees in the program. We had considered, as part of the adoption of considering making changes to the MAC meeting minutes, or the bylaws, sorry, broadening the definition here in section 3A for physicians to have it be just clinicians. But as we were reviewing the authorizing federal regulations, it specifically said that the advisory committee has to have physicians participate in the policy-making process. So we had talked about that, but just to explain why no change is occurring there in the composition on the provider side. And then section 4 kind of lays out a little bit more the representatives of those who are participating on the MAC, representing the interests of those who are enrolled in the program. Okay, let's go down to section 5. So here again, because of organizational changes, in the past, one member of the MAC used to be a designee from the Utah Department of Human Services, which was at the time separate from the Department of Health. Since those two entities have now been merged into one entity, there will no longer be an appointed member for the Department of Human Services, and we've just allocated that membership appointment into the Medicaid enrollee representation group to make sure we didn't shrink the number of people on the MAC and continue to get representation. And then here in Article 7, membership and appointment, we had talked about this earlier, but it's a little redundant in the bylaws in terms of who makes the appointments. So instead of the former executive director of the Department of Health, now it is the deputy director in the Department of Health and Human Services over healthcare administration. And down to section 5, same change in terms of striking the executive director and replacing that with the deputy director, and that's the same change in section 6. Okay, then moving to Article 8. I don't think we had any changes to the qualifications and responsibilities of appointees to the MAC. Generally, people who are willing to engage, have insights and perspective on the Medicaid program, can evaluate things and offer insights and perspective from a place of unbiased and personal integrity type of feedback. Okay, then section 2, we didn't have any changes there. 3, I do want to talk a little bit about section 4 here, responsibilities of the department to the MAC members, and this was something I touched on earlier. Recognizing the MAC is advisory only to the department is also making commitments back to the members of the MAC in consideration of their time and effort participating in this program. And so they are committing to clearly define their expectations of the MAC, provide opportunities and ample time to respond to and advise on proposed programs, policies, regulations, and budget priorities, and responding to the MAC's advice and justifying why advice may not be taken. And then understanding and accepting the committee member, the public, as a partner in the decision-making process, providing staff assistance for independent technical assistance, and financial arrangements to participate in the meetings if MAC members are financially challenged to participate in the meetings, and the department can actually provide travel type of assistance to attend the meetings if that is required. So I think that's a helpful perspective, again, for people to be aware of in terms of the department's commitment to us. Then into the meetings section, we made some small changes just on the acronym. Instead of Division of Medicaid and Healthcare Financing. It's the Division of Integrated Healthcare, so DMHF is now DIH, as referenced in section 3 and 4 here. And then in officers and committee, I think these are just some wording changes in terms of the chair and the vice chair are the officers of the committee, and there's an at-large member that is appointed every 2 years by the MAC chair and vice chair. And every other year in September, I believe, we elect a new vice chair. And then after 2 years, the vice chair becomes the new chair of the MAC. And that process is laid out here in Article 10 in terms of the succession and the appointment and responsibilities of those officers. Then moving into Article 11, Department Personnel, slight change in the name of the division, again, replacing Division of Medicaid and Healthcare Financing to Division of Integrated Healthcare. And the associated acronym down there in point 5. No changes to conflict of interest, reimbursement, reports and recommendations. Press statements is not something the MAC usually does, but when that is a consideration, there are rules governing the creating and dissemination of statements to the press. So just some small wording changes here to clean up, again, the name of the division and just some preferred language choice here. And then as we move into Article 18, marketing review, the MAC sometimes will be asked upon to form a subcommittee that will review marketing materials from some of the managed care entities. And in this section, again, we've just renamed the organization from the Division of Medicaid and Health Financing to the Division of Integrated Healthcare, and replaced Department of Health with Department of Health and Human Services. And then the final change, which I think we had originally planned to adopt these changes in our December meeting, but ran out of time on our agenda. So I think we'll need to revise this from December 2022 to today's date if we decide that all of these changes are acceptable. So let me pause there, see if we have any questions as to the changes in the bylaws or just in the bylaws in general in terms of our chartering mission. Okay, if there aren't any changes, they're not very controversial. Again, pretty much just cleaning up for organizational updating. We need to take action on voting to adopt these bylaws, so I'm willing to entertain a motion. If someone would like to make a motion and then a second to adopt the changes.
Michael, this is Brian with Molina, Brian Monson, and I reviewed those changes as well. See nothing wrong with them, and so I'll move to approve.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. All right, so we'll put that forward for a vote, and I'm not going to again do a roll call vote. I'll just assume, since no one has spoken in opposition, that the voting will be unanimous unless someone raises a point of opposition and would like to vote against the changes. Okay, so we will proceed with the bylaw updates having been approved unanimously with today. All right, thank you everyone for your review and consideration of the bylaw changes and just going through with us the meeting of our MAC obligations and what we're here chartered to do. So next we have some public hearing considerations from Laura Belgique on our 11:15 demonstration. So she has a brief presentation and then we'll have a chance to offer some feedback. So we'll turn some time over to Laura.
Great, thank you, Michael. It's hard to believe another year has gone by, but it is time for another annual event, which is the 11:15 Demonstration Annual Public Forum. As mentioned in the agenda, this is an opportunity to provide feedback on the progress the department is making with the 11:15 demonstration, including any issues, concerns, or suggestions. So once a year, a summary of the programs in the demonstration is provided during this meeting. So I will go ahead and read through the document that was shared with you, and then we will open it up for comments, as Michael mentioned. So just a quick summary, Utah's Medicaid Reform 11:15 demonstration is a statewide waiver that gives the Utah Department of Health and Human Services federal authorization to administer specific medical programs and benefits that are not otherwise allowable under federal rules. The demonstration was approved first in February of 2002, implemented on July 1st of 2002. Generally, Section 11:15 demonstrations are approved for an initial 5-year period and can be extended in additional 3 to 5 year increments. Over the years, additional programs and benefits have been authorized under the demonstration. And on June 30th of 2021, Utah submitted a renewal request that was approved by CMS on June 30th of last year. With this renewal, the name of the demonstration is now the Utah Medicaid Reform 11:15 demonstration. And this current demonstration has approval through the end of June of 2027. So now we'll just go through and give a brief summary of the different demonstrations. So first is adult expansion. This provides Medicaid benefits to adults age 19 through 64 who have household income up to 133% of the federal poverty level. Next is age of dental. This provides state plan benefits, dental benefits, to Medicaid eligible individuals age 65 and older. The current eligibles and non-traditional benefits. This provides a slightly reduced benefit package for adults receiving parent caretaker relative Medicaid. And as been previously discussed with the recent demonstration renewal, CMS is requiring the state to move this population fully into the state plan by the end of this year. In addition, members of the adult expansion population with dependent children fall into the same provision and will have uniform state plan benefits also by the end of this year. Next is dental benefits for individuals who are blind or disabled. This provides state plan dental benefits to individuals age 18 and older who are blind or have disabilities. Next is employer-sponsored insurance. Individuals in the adult expansion group are required to enroll in employer-sponsored insurance if it is available to the eligible individual. Next is former foster care youth from another state. This provides state plan Medicaid benefits to former foster care youth from another state up to the age of 26. Next is housing-related services and supports. This provides housing-related services and supports in the form of tenancy support, community transition, and supportive living services to targeted adult Medicaid enrollees experiencing homelessness, food or transportation insecurity, or interpersonal violence and trauma. Next is intensive stabilization services. This allows the state to provide intensive stabilization services to Medicaid eligible children and youth under the age of 21 who are in state custody or at risk of state custody and experiencing significant emotional and or behavioral challenges. Next is residential and inpatient treatment for individuals with serious mental illness. This provides expenditure authority for services furnished to eligible individuals ages 21 through 64 who receive a treatment for an SMI and who are short-term residents in facilities that meet the definition of an IMD. Next is substance use disorder. This is residential treatment. This provides coverage of said residential treatment and an institution for mental disease for all Medicaid eligible individuals. Next is targeted adult Medicaid. This provides state plan Medicaid benefits to a targeted group of adults without dependent children. Next is targeted adult dental benefits. This provides state plan dental benefits for targeted adult Medicaid eligible individuals who are receiving substance use disorder treatment. Next is Utah's Premium Partnership for Health Insurance. This provides premium assistance to help pay the individual's or family share of monthly premium cost or employer-sponsored insurance, or COBRA. And then finally, the Utah Medicaid Integrated Care. This allows the state to operate an integrated managed care program combining physical health and behavioral health services in 5 Utah counties for the adult expansion population, not including the targeted adult population. And then the table below gives an at-a-glance enrollment numbers for the different demonstrations. So we can now open it up for comments.
And so, Laura, what would be most helpful for you in terms of comments from members of the MAC? What are you hoping to receive in terms of feedback?
As mentioned, this is an opportunity to provide any feedback on the progress we are making, any issues, concerns, or suggestions. What we do is we, if there are any offered, we consider those and also take them back to CMS.
Okay, so any members of the MAC who have feedback on any of those programs, quite a listing of them. Right, any members of the community in general that you would like to participate and offer feedback on any of the aspects of the waiver programs? Okay. Well, seems like we don't have much additional feedback to offer in terms of specific implementation. Okay, Lisa. So you're still on mute, Lisa, sorry.
Thank you. You think I'd be over that. If we do have questions that come up before this is submitted to CMS in the next couple days, I just have some questions about a couple of these. Would I address that with, could I address that with you after this, or where would be the best
Sure.
place to ask those questions?
Yes, you can certainly send them. Probably what I will do is send you the 11:15 demonstration email, and I'll go ahead and include that in the chat.
Thank you, Laura. I just have some questions about the intersection between the family, just how it's actually played out between the Family First dollars, which keep parents that actually or have physical custody of their kids under TAM, and just some of those rough spots. So if I
Sure.
can, that'd be great.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for your presentation, Laura. We appreciate you giving us a chance to comment on the waiver. A lot of positive coverage options that are offered through the waiver, which we appreciate. People have some additional perspectives. We'll look forward to additional submissions. Yes, Lisa, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify. So it is going through and expected that family members will receive the same Medicaid, not the reduced Medicaid, by the end of this calendar year.
Correct.
Great.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda, we have Jennifer Strohecker with the Director's Report. Jennifer.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to switch screens here, Sharon, and I do have an update to share with you all. Looking forward to lots of changes since the last time we've met, and excited to share with you some direction we have with regard to our unwinding activities. So that's where I'll dive in. So first of all, the federal government passed a law at the end of December called the Consolidated Appropriations Act. This was also known as the Omnibus Bill, but it was formally named the Consolidated Appropriations Act. And with this, this act actually had many different provisions in it that involved Medicaid. And we will be unwrapping this and looking at what these many provisions are over the next several weeks to months. An important piece of this act is that it actually decoupled the public health emergency from the Medicaid continuous enrollment requirement. A second provision of this is that it did provide a step down of the 6.2% enhanced federal match that the Medicaid plans have been receiving throughout this duration of time. So officially, we have been able to identify an unwinding date when we will begin. This Act also has many other provisions, as I mentioned. One important provision I'd like to call out that caught our attention is a requirement for states to apply a 12-month continuous eligibility for children, and this will go into effect on January 1st, 2024. But if I could now, I'd like to walk through just a little bit more about the unwinding the continuous enrollment requirements, and then Jeff will dive in with greater detail during his time. What this means for us as a state as we now look at the unwinding of our continuous enrollment requirements, that we will officially begin our unwinding activities on March 1st, 2023. While we begin our reviews at this time, our first closures will go into effect on April 30th. This is huge news, and it actually kicks into gear many, many different pieces of work on our part to really get our teams and our staff ready for what's ahead. I'll let Jeff walk through that, but I would like to just call out a couple things. First of all, member communication is really important at this point in time. We are sending out the first member notice around February 1st of this year, but we have sent it to print, and it should be ready to hopefully mail by the end of the month. A key message that we really want our members to know at this point is, first of all, update your address. It's really important that we have correct contact information from our members so that we can mail their renewal forms to the correct place. So it's the same message we've had all along around correct addresses, but we want to continue to emphasize this during that time. We've had an additional message that we will emphasize through this time as well, which I've highlighted here, is being aware of when their review will occur. An important note is that unwinding will occur over a 12-month period of time. And so we want members to really understand, first of all, is that their review date may occur early on in that process, sometime in March or April, or it could occur much later in the year. And it's important for them to know what their review date is and to have their address updated so they can receive updated information in the mail. I'll let Jeff touch on other important updates we want to share, but certainly this is big news for our program as this will kick into gear the unwinding activities. Now, I mentioned that part of the Consolidated Appropriations Act was this decoupling of our unwinding activities with the public health emergency. So it's really important to know, as we've labeled this PHE unwinding, it is no longer called PHE unwinding. If you'll note, we are calling it unwinding the continuous eligibility component because the PHE is actually still in effect. The PHE was officially renewed at the federal level on January 11th, 2023. This puts us into another 90-day renewal. CMS is still assuring us that they will give us a 60-day notice so that we will know when the PHE will expire. That 60-day mark will be February 10th of next month. actually. If we don't receive a notice before that date, we can assume that the PHE will renew it again. However, we do know that we do have that 60-day notice. So what does that mean? If the PHE is still in effect, all of the emergency provisions that have been put in place due to the PHE still continue forward. So all of our coverage exceptions and some of the program modifications that were made as a result of the PHE still remain in place through the duration of the PHE. So we've modified our resources and our tools to reflect those changes. If you do navigate to our unwinding website here, you'll see that it has been updated to reflect this change around the Consolidated Appropriations Act, how that changes some of the rules of how we are unwinding just a little bit, but specifically that the PHE will continue forward, and those waivered services do still remain in effect through that time. So Jeff will be bringing you a lot more information around PHE unwinding. So if you do have questions about that, perhaps you could hold those until, I'm sorry, Jeff will have much more information around our continuous enrollment unwinding. And if you have questions at that time, perhaps you can hold them. But are there any other questions for me right now about the continuous, the Consolidated Appropriations Act and the provisions of that bill? Okay, if not, I'll continue forward with just another few updates we want to share. So our PRISM system, we've been talking for quite a long time now about our staffs and our stakeholders' efforts to really prepare for our implementation of our new software system, which is our PRISM system. This will replace our current MMIS and MMCS system. It will have a large system impact on the way we do our operations here at Medicaid. Our providers will experience this, our staff will experience this, and so we want to make sure that you're aware of this. We're really excited to announce an important milestone that was met. On January 3rd of this year, the division completed a soft go live. So all the exit criteria were met to complete this phase of the project, which was really important. This was tens of thousands of test cases that have been done to make sure that our new system will meet all the requirements that are necessary to conduct our business as we move from our current system into our new system. And so I really want to applaud the efforts of our team and those of our stakeholders who contributed to that testing effort. We are shifting gears now as we prepare for our go live date of April 3rd, 2023, where our new system will go live. We are shifting gears so that our staff can be very focused on preparing themselves to be trained and also getting all of our materials ready so that all of the training resources that are needed for our providers are ready so that our provider training can launch in February. And so I'm going to just share quickly, let me scroll down here, about communication and training resources. We have released some Medicaid information bulletins in both December and January. There's a MIB that's going out later today, I believe, that contains a lot of PRISM information in it. This is really important for our providers and stakeholders to be familiar with, as they contain many details around the broad system changes that will occur with our PRISM system go live. The one important piece in December is our general changes update. There are also lots of hyperlinks and materials there that will guide you to our resource pages and the information you need to understand what's happening and how it will affect you. The January MIB that is, I believe that will be published later today, contains information about our freeze. It has a couple other general updates about our PRISM system, but it also contains our freeze information. So what is our freeze? It's important also to recognize that in order to prepare our systems and freeze our data from our current system today and move it and pick it up and put it into our new system, it requires that our systems freeze for a 3-week period. This freeze time frame is from March 13th to April 3rd. At that time, many of our systems will be frozen. There are many systems and business needs that can still be met during that time. But it is important to recognize why this freeze is happening, and that the duration of the freeze was necessary to take all of our business today that's housed in our current system and move it into our new system. The MIB that is being released today contains many detailed documents as well as resources that will help guide our providers to understand what is frozen during that time and what is still functional. So just as a very, very high level, I'm not going to go through it on this call, but just as a very high level, for example, our claims processing will freeze during this time. So no claims will be able to process through this 3-week window. What will still function as a workaround, pharmacy claims will still be able to adjudicate, so people can go to the pharmacy and get their claims. The prior authorization system, the prior authorizations will still occur through a workaround process, so that our prior auth and the resources needed to evaluate prior auth requests will still occur. So that type of information is contained within that January MIB article and also on our PRISM website. So I would direct you to that for any questions that you may have, or shoot them our way. We're happy to assist you and support you with anything, any questions you may have or needs you have. We really, really, really want our providers and our stakeholders to be aware of what's happening and to be able to receive the information you need to understand how these changes affect you. The last piece I will share regarding this communication and training is really important. Our teams have been preparing for a long time to be trained themselves and knowledgeable about these system changes, but also to turn around and be able to train our providers and have robust resources available so that our provider community and our partners are able to know how to use our new system. We have live trainings that are being posted on a Google Calendar starting in February. That will be live walkthroughs that providers and others can log into and join live. They can ask a live Q&A at this time. These will be taped and posted to our website. So there's an opportunity to go back and review those afterward. There are also on-demand e-learnings. So there is a whole library of e-learnings that can also be accessed through this link. So let me, if you were to navigate, I'm just going to quickly share just so you can see what we have available for you, because it really is helpful to have you go and see what we have. If you see here, if we look at a glance document of our training materials that are available under the provider resource tab, there's a few ways to look at this, but you can see there are many different trainings already available. You can click into that. On the more details tab, you can actually get the Google call-in information and then add it to your calendar. So it does really make it nice for providers to be able to link to these resources and be able to take advantage of them. We are populating more and more of these trainings as our team has these materials ready. We will load them onto this calendar prior to our February go live date with training. Another piece too that I mentioned were the e-learnings. And if you look through here, we do have a broad array of e-learnings available. They are sorted by business type. So you can see that depending on what area you're looking for, there are a number of resources available, as well as a lot of the resources that we've had on the page for some time. So I encourage you to familiarize yourselves to these resources and just be aware that they are there for you to be ready as a provider or to just be familiar with the changes that are happening. Okay, I do want to touch on a couple things that came up in our last meeting very briefly. And the one element that was brought, and I was not at our last meeting, but I know a question was posed by Michael regarding quality withholds that did that were introduced as part of the governor's budget. And one of the things I wanted to share today was this element of quality withholds and our larger quality vision as we begin sharing with you what we're working on as a division and some of our goals looking forward. So as was brought up in our last MAC meeting, the governor's budget included a statement around quality withholds within the managed care contracts effective July 1st, 2023. This statement was extracted from our 3 health collaborative goals that Medicaid had submitted to the governor's office as part of our shared vision and partnership in the health collaborative work that's being done across the state. And I wanted to just make you aware that the division is working with department leadership and the governor's office to implement the governor's intent. So we are well underway in preparing what that looks like with quality withholds within the managed care contracts. And as we work on that drafting of that work internally and are ready to bring it to you, we certainly will share that with the MAC as that is developed and drafted and developed. But in conjunction with this, I really did want to share with you our larger vision that we have to focus on quality, and wanted to share with you some steps. I know I've shared with you in the past that we have intent to hire a full-time medical director, and that position right now is moving through the approval steps and hopefully will be posted within the next couple of weeks. So we do have the intent of hiring a full-time medical director that works for our Medicaid program and supports the work of the Division of Integrated Healthcare. And the specific qualifications we're really looking for in this role is someone who's had an extensive background within quality experience, who's had quality, invested in quality related work, and can bring that to our program to enrich the work that we do. Another piece, as we implement our CMS mandate to publish our core set measures in 2024, the division is looking to contract with an external vendor to meet those core set requirements. So again, that will be nice for us. We've been really handling a lot of our work internally with some internal staff around some of our calculations with core set measures. And as we look to really enhance our quality vision, we are looking to contract with an external vendor who can support that with us. We will also be creating a quality team, and this will be a team that really helps us emphasize quality throughout our division. We have a lot of quality work that's being done across our Medicaid program, and that's really driven great results. But we'd like to bring this work together in a quality team that can help us emphasize the priorities that we have around quality and the work that it translates to improved care and efficiencies within our division. So with that, I thought I'd share that with you now, and we'll commit to bringing the next steps of this to you as this work does move forward. But we're really excited about it and are excited to share with you what those next steps look like. Are there any questions about either the PRISM piece or the quality withholds and our larger quality vision right now?
One comment I have is the governor's budget proposal just said the money would be contingent upon quality. It didn't specifically said it would be withheld. So I guess there are different implementation options in terms of requiring penalties for not meeting performance rather than just withholding the money until some established criteria are met, I guess, in terms of how we explore that. But any members of the committee have questions on any of this? Okay, thank you, Stephanie. All right.
Thank you, Michael, for your comment, and more to come on this. The last piece I wanted to touch on, we recognize that legislative session falls with a couple MAC meetings this year, and we are going to focus and have our legislative focus with regard to Medicaid's work, and the things that we're looking at will be in our February meeting. But I did want to just highlight what came out of the governor's budget one more time and just have a visibility to that, and some things we'll be presenting on next week as we have our days here in front of the Social Services Committee. I know Eric walked through these with you last time, but I just wanted, again, for the visibility's sake, to have you see the various items that are represented in the governor's budget and that do support the work of the division, and put these up for visibility. I won't go through them. I know we went through them last time. Are there any questions about these that we could address today? Okay. If not, I will say that we do have our eyes on a number of other bills that do impact Medicaid, and we'll give you an update on those in February, of course. But we're looking forward to what this legislative session produces for us. And thank you again for your time today. If there are any other questions, I can take those now. If not, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Then let's just roll over to Jeff, your presentation, continuation on the eligibility and enrollment discussion, and see if we can build upon what Jennifer's presented.
Sounds good. I don't know that I have all the answers. I'll do the best I can today to share what I do know. Let's start with, hopefully my screen begins. There we go. So this is the report formerly known as the PHE Unwinding Report. It's still that way on the agenda. We'll get that changed for next time. As you just heard, we're calling this now the Medicaid Unwinding Report, and really trying to focus less on the public health emergency, although that still is ongoing and has impacts to Medicaid. We want to make sure that we're focusing on the Medicaid continuous enrollment requirement going away. So just to reiterate what was already said, as most of you know, Medicaid in March of 2020 was asked to keep all cases open, and new people coming into the program have been held open for quite some time now. It's going to be a total of 38 months, if I did my math right, when this is all said and done, and even a little bit longer for some. So with that, we have new numbers for you today. So you're seeing the first of the new numbers. This is kind of fun. Over the years, we recognize that the report that showed the overall enrollment for Medicaid it contains some duplication in there. And part of that was how the report that we were pulling that information from was structured for actually a different purpose. It was called the Kaiser report. I'm going to show you in just a moment a new graph that you get to play with a little bit, and that's kind of fun. You can actually do some of your own exploration on different Medicaid groups. And there's still some work to be done on that report as well, but you're seeing this fresh. For today, these are the numbers right now of where we are with Medicaid enrollment. The purple here indicating our total enrollment overall, and I'll call it light green, but I'm sure there's a better color name for that. The number of cases that are or number of individuals that are being held open currently at DWS. There's a lot of folks. All of these folks must be renewed during this new 12-month period that, again, we'll start with on March 1st. And it's going to be an interesting time for workforce services. It certainly is an interesting time in the Medicaid world. Some have called this as big an event for Medicaid enrollment as the ACA was back in 2014. And I believe that's probably fairly accurate. So as you've already heard, the Consolidated Appropriations Act that was finally passed at the end of last year, it separated or really tore these two things apart. The public health emergency continues. The continuous enrollment period for Medicaid ends. That 60-day notice we were looking for was actually a little bit longer, in some cases a little bit shorter, depending on how you look at that, in getting us ready to go. So we will be starting, as I mentioned, in March 1st. I've got a couple of graphs I'm going to show you in just a moment, so I'll skip through some of this. This is the document you have in your notes today. I did want to focus on some of the communication because that's the piece that you'll see and physically see at kickoff in the next little bit. As mentioned, we have a giant notice. Well, I'll call it giant notice. It's really just a page long on English on one side, Spanish on the back side. It's on light green paper and will be sent, we hope, actually by the end of the month. It's actually a little bit ahead on the printing. I heard this morning we're 1/3 of the way through printing 250,000 notices. It's a lot of notices to get out, and hope to get that out by the end of the month, if not the first part of February. Right behind that, there'll be 3 other notices that will go out. And I'll show you more detail about those in just a minute. Those will also go out on colored paper. We know the colors are yellow and pink and light blue, but we don't know which notice will be with which. So stay tuned, because that's going to be an exciting component, I'm sure, as we figure out the color for the notices. But the planning does continue. We've been now working on this for over a year, trying to make sure that the transition can be as smooth as possible. We will be sorting, the message continues to be the same. We've been saying all along, please keep your information up to date with us, making sure we can contact you when the time comes. We will be doing an activity here in February, and I would say the safe date for all is February 20th, to start looking at and knowing and understanding when the review date is for the family that you're helping. Families will be able to look up online. We'll have some tools available to them there as well, so they can look up. They can do this today. The problem is that we may be moving some people's renewal dates as we try to organize where we think we want to focus, which cases come first in line. So renewal dates after February 20th will be set, and people can then see how this is going to impact them individually. For example, they might be able to look up and say, you know, it looks like my review is in November. I'm okay to go at least until November, and then we'll talk renewal at that time. And hopefully that brings some comfort to some folks. Obviously, we don't have the capacity to look at everybody day one, nor intend to. This is a 12-month-long process, 14 months really by the time we finish all of the activity up. I'll show you, again, a little bit more detail here in just a moment. And then did want to point out that for this group particularly, we think it's important that everybody can see the data we're sharing with CMS. CMS has a lot of criteria that need to be, data that needs to be shared. And we have created our own dashboard that will go live now on February 13th. So you'll be able to see the amount of work that we have ahead of us. You'll be able to see what is happening as cases are reviewed month to month. You'll be able to note who is moving on to the exchange, for example, who's moving over to CHIP, what's happening, are there closures occurring, et cetera. It also includes various things like the number of new applications coming in. You'll see a little bit about churn in there. You'll see a little bit on the call wait time at DWS, and much more information. So we hope to roll that out live. I'll tell you just a little teaser. It's live behind the scenes right now. So that means it's really working pretty well, but we'll roll that out live on 2/13 when the final updates are made there. So we're excited about that advent. That's a big one for us to hit. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and show you some of the graphs. You're seeing this as Jen's seeing this, so that's always a little bit dangerous for me, but I wanted to let you see some of the key dates and actually let you see what we're working on. This is not yet public, but will be as soon as it's finally reviewed and we have every component we think that we need. This will replace the current slideshow that is on the unwinding site. But these actually have dates to them now. Before we were talking in a lot of ifs, ands, and buts. We weren't quite sure. It was very nebulous on what those dates would be. But as we've been talking here, 12/29, that starts this process off. By 2/15, by February 15th, we need to be sharing information with both with the public and with CMS. There's some specific documentation that needs to go to them to show that the system is ready to go on the eligibility side, to show how we've organized our reviews over the course of the 12 months, and some baseline data to be sent very shortly thereafter to show what's occurring and what is the workload that's in front of us. As mentioned, on 2/13, just a couple days before that, we'll have that live data from DWS going public as well. The key date to remember as far as activity is that on 3/1, March 1st, that will be the first time that DWS starts to look at what we call ex parte, or reviews without the person, to start going through the first month of casework. It's really the April reviews for May benefits. So what that means is the first time you'll see some of that transitory activity of people moving from Medicaid to CHIP, people either losing eligibility because they're no longer eligible, or you have folks that are moving on to the exchange. That will occur April 30th, because these are April reviews for May benefits. But they start that activity on March 1st. So they'll start those reviews without involving the person. If we're unable to get enough information with all the sources we have, I think some people think we have more sources than we have, but we don't. We'll do the best we can. We'll try to renew cases that we are able to do, and then we'll send out reviews to those folks that we could not do that ex parte renewal. So again, that activity starts March 1st, but it doesn't end until April of 2024. It's a long ways off. As mentioned, the enhanced funding does have some changes to it now. The 6.2% enhanced match will end at the end of March 31st. From April 1st to June 30th, it drops to 5%, and then July 2.5%, October 1.5% of advanced funding. So it's a tapered down amount there. And then, of course, the reviews will continue. I'm going to show you a couple of other slides here. This, again, the slideshow will be available here quite shortly, we hope. This is a timeline to show you again. We showed you this version before, but these are the actual dates now. We start this activity in March. The first cases we're looking at are those that we know have eligibility issues. Either they've reported previously that they're over income. An example of that is a Medicaid child that we believe needs to move to CHIP. We'll look at those cases first. So you should see some of that activity happening. There's also some folks that we know no longer qualify for Medicaid or for CHIP, and they'll be going off to the exchange. So you'll see some of that activity happening. We expect to see probably higher Medicaid disenrollment over those first 3 to 4, maybe 5 months even, as we've tried to organize our casework to focus on those that have not completed their renewals, maybe are not using their benefits at all, and try to look at those cases first. And that's indicated here by the light blue. But again, that earliest date for those transitions should be at the end of April, April 30th. And that's what this is meant to illustrate for you. And I promise I can come back to any of these you want to see. Here's a little, we've shown this before, but this is a preview of what some of that data you'll see from Workforce Services will look like, again, on 213. Oh, and don't want to skip that too fast. Other notable changes, the CHIP health insurance premiums will resume. They'll start for most CHIP, well, I won't say most, a portion of CHIP families in May and June and July. So it depends on their end date of their cycle. We're going to charge their quarterly premium. So May for some, June for others, July for others. And they are getting a still specific notice I'll show you in just a moment. And that is going to start up again in May. Medicaid spend down, folks, if you have to pay a spend down, those have not been charged or not required to be charged during the course of the pandemic. We will start to require those once that case is pulled up and reviewed. The number is, make sure we are charging the right amount. From that point on, those spend downs will need to be paid. The same with Medicaid work incentive folks that are paying a premium, et cetera. This is an interesting one. The optional COVID-19 group, which we all thought would end when all of this started, actually will continue. That group is still tied to the public health emergency and therefore will continue during all this time. So it's possible to have some people that will lose their Medicaid holistic benefits, but will keep the COVID-19 benefits that cover testing-related services, and vaccinations, et cetera. And then, of course, other components will return to normal. Here's the list of notices. I thought that would be helpful to share. I will fill in the dates as soon as we have them, and we will post these notices online so you can see them. The first one that we're talking about already is that general notice. It's going to be going to all Medicaid members. It's going to be sent, we think, now at the end of January. That's where our fingers are crossed for. We know it's on light green paper, green for go. So that's a good sign to say that this process is being kicked off. The CHIP premium notice will go off shortly thereafter to let those folks know that premiums will be charged or it's starting to charge. The group about the spend downs I just mentioned will also be sent about that same time in February. And a group I did not talk about, the emergency Medicaid folks who actually come up last in all of this. They're going to be at the very end of the line, if you will. Those folks will be getting a letter as well, letting them know that if their citizenship status has changed, now's the time to let us know so we can look at full Medicaid for them, or that their Medicaid will likely end near the end of this process, and thereafter they'll need to apply like they did in the past. If they had an emergency, they can apply for Medicaid, and we can go back to cover that event. That's a mouthful. That's a lot of stuff. Let me pause there and take questions on the continuous enrollment ending. I can show you those screens again that you want to see, and then I can show you the new graph of enrollment. Jen.
Hi, real quick, Jeff. Just a question to clarify the date that the premiums would kick in. I think the slide had said April, but I think you had said May. Could you just walk through what that date is?
Sure. We've tried to nail that one down. The coding in the system goes in the month of April, which means that the first time we can actually charge is May. So this is again specifically for the CHIP families. We will begin resuming those the CHIP premiums in May, June, or July. They've been getting notices to pay premiums all along. The amount is $0. So they've been getting these notices to you have a premium that's owed, but it's $0, so they don't have to pay anything. The numbers will essentially be filled in May and June and July. So if they're used to getting a notice every 90 days, like they have for the past 3 years, they'll get that notice that this time it's serious, there is an amount that's attached to that. And again, that notice that they get, we'll explain that a little bit more in detail to them and remind them of how to pay that. This might be new for some of the folks that are on the CHIP program. Good question. Thanks, Jim. Are there others?
Yes, Jeff, I have a question. Oh, okay. Well, Russ, let's let you go first and then I'll ask Mike.
Thanks, Jeff. Hey, just curious on the tracking that you mentioned. You said you'd be able to see who's transitioned to CHIP, who's been referred to ACA. I think you're talking kind of aggregate dashboard view, but also I assume in the background, you actually know exactly who that is, and that if people are not actually making a transition, that you're able to continue ongoing outreach. And so part of my question is, what's kind of the staged outreach if an individual is not getting transitioned in some way, if that makes sense?
It does. So of course, the goal will be to, at that person's renewal date, whatever that is, let's pick July of this year for fun. That activity will start off in June, where DWS is starting to look at that family to see if they can renew them on their own. If that can't occur, they'll get a review in late June to say, hey, July is important. You need to follow up with us. At the point that they follow up with us, we'll look at the case and let's say that they're over income for that particular program. We'll look at other Medicaid programs or CHIP if that's an option, or the exchange if that's the option. And that's assuming that the family has followed through with us and is working with us. So we'll be able to know where that family is going. As any case is going to leave the Medicaid world, we'll be talking with the health plan specifically as well to let them know that here's a family that's leaving, an individual that's leaving our program and going on to the exchange, for example. Or the other side of this is that they have not been playing with us. We don't have enough information to renew the case. They've not played with us to know what that information is, and therefore the case is closing. We're also sending that information to the health plans as well, so they'll see that in advance. It's just shortly in advance. It's about that 10-day notice, but that still is at least another touch point where that family can maybe get some contact from those plans and hopefully get back with us. Of course, there will be some cases that close, and then the person, maybe they're on vacation, they follow up with us, and we get that case reopened in the next month as well. But it is such a busy time that I do think it's going to be a little bit delayed over what it might normally be.
Great, thank you.
You bet.
Okay, Stephanie, go ahead with your question, please.
Yeah, thanks. So for the spend down and the work incentive premiums, so you covered how the CHIP premiums are going to go, but for the work incentive and the spend down, can you just kind of walk me through that one more time? Because
Sure.
Does that start after April or in May? Because it says the next renewal, but what if they renew next month?
It's a great question, Stephanie. Appreciate it. So there are two things that have to happen before we start to actually charge a spend down. So again, spend down, the amounts are out there. Some people have actually been paying those all during this time to make sure they don't go over assets at the end of this. That's perfectly fine. But two things need to occur. So one is we have to get past April 1st, because that's when the unwinding officially ends at that point, or the requirement officially ends to keep cases open. So it has to be after April 1st. So if the case is renewed next month in February, then we'll be talking to them in February of 24 and doing their renewal. And at that point, they'll be paying their spend down, or being required to pay their spend down. An easy example this year would be someone's case that comes up in August for renewal. Let's say their spend down amount was $1,700. We look at that case and realize, well, really, it's supposed to be $150. We'll make that change to $150. And at that point, because it's past April 1st and we're in August and the renewal was completed, we'll now start to charge that person $150. So the reason that we don't charge right away is that the amounts might have changed. Income has changed over this period of time. That might not be the right program for them. Either they're maybe going back to full service Medicaid where there is no cost, or perhaps it's going the other way where their spend down is increased. Because we don't know that, we want to make sure we look at the case before any spend down is required. Does that help? Does that get? Okay, I see your message. Thanks.
Okay, I have a question, but let me just ask if anybody else has any further questions before I dive in. Okay, thank you for all of that information, Jeff. One of the provisions of the Consolidated Appropriations Act was a requirement that for the agency to continue receiving the enhanced federal participation, that prior to you terminating someone from the roles, that you have to undertake a good faith effort to contact the individual using more than one modality, is the exact language. So I'm just wondering what processes you have in place to ensure that you've used more than one modality and what that looks like from the inside baseball angle of putting this into effect.
You know, this has been a really interesting provision. So first of all, there's more guidance coming out from CMS on that, and I'll tell you why. An example of this, so the idea is if someone is not reachable, we're trying to do their renewal. It's their turn. I'll pick November again. It's November, their turn is up. We're looking at their review and we can't complete it on our own. We've reached out to them and mailed information out. The return mail comes back to us when we recognize we haven't found that person. Let's say in this case, the person is homeless and the one way that we can contact them is through general delivery. That's actually a common case with the homeless population. We don't have a phone number for them. We don't have any other way to deal with them. That question has been raised to CMS and not yet answered. So in a perfect circumstance, we would have a phone number, we'd have an email, we'd have a different way to go about this with that person. We recognize we have return mail, physical return mail from them. We would try the email approach. We would try a phone call to reach out to that specific individual. In this case, the scenario I'm playing out for you, we have no way to do that. So that regulation is interesting to us. We're not quite sure how it's going to really be implemented. There are other examples where it's possible you don't have to be homeless. It's possible that we only have one address for you and no phone numbers for you. What do we do in that case as well? So more guidance to come on that one. It's an interesting piece for us. It doesn't preclude us from closing cases in general. It just means that if the reason that I would close that person's case is returned mail, I can't do it. I need to make sure that we're reaching out in some other way before that closure occurs. So the intent there, at least right now, is that if we've gotten return mail, received return mail from the folks, that we'll be reaching out via phone and trying to get a hold of that person that way. And even that's interesting for me, that is it okay if I call in, so Mike, I'll use you as an example. Let's say I got return mail for you. I then call you tomorrow to say, hey, guess what, Michael, I'm leaving you a message. Your case is closing.
But you would need my phone number, which I'm sure you don't have.
I actually do have yours. But let's say that I did reach out to you and left a message for you. That's two modalities. But does that count? I never really spoke with you. I never really got a hold of you in some way that's meaningful. What about the ability that we're doing right now, sharing our closure list with the health plans? Does that count? So we have more questions and answers in that particular item. It's a great question, and we're still trying to work through it.
Okay, so first line of contact is going to be mail, and then if you get returned mail, you're going to be exploring other modalities of contact, and that could involve providers, email, phone numbers, and just working through a good faith effort. More details to come from CMS, but for those of us who are trying to partner with you and contacting people, that's maybe at what point we could expect to be engaged at a secondary level or so. Okay.
Very well said. Thank you. Yes.
And then I'm curious about the overall eligibility enrollment report. We didn't have one last month, and I'm curious when we're going to start seeing a new enrollment report. You seem to touch on something very exciting at the beginning of your presentation, but for those of us who have got the reports, they're all PDFs and not interactive in terms of, oh, well, you know, if I don't click on that, I'm going to miss it. And then, okay.
I am so glad you asked. I'm so excited to share with you a new tool. We've been working, and Michael, you may recall back in the day, I mentioned earlier that the Kaiser report, which is a report that was developed by DWS for their purposes to try and track decisions being made on various cases, not just Medicaid and CHIP, there was some duplication in there. So what we've done is to do the best we can to sort out that duplication, and you're seeing, when you come in, you're probably seeing a lot of lines on your graph. But I'm not an expert here, but I'll tell you what I have learned. First of all, there's some naming conventions here that we could probably improve a little bit, but As you double click any of those groups, it will isolate and show you just one line at a time. So if you were to pick PCN, for example, and double click it, you'll get a yellow line at the bottom that will show you kind of the history of PCN. And you can see the open enrollments there and excitement galore about the enrollment for that particular program, as you can do with any of these. You may also select by just one click. If you select any of these different groups, you'll see just the lines that you select. So I've selected right now the total. I've double clicked on the total, which is the bottom number here. I'll show you that with my mouse. And this shows you the overall Medicaid enrollment. And here's the cool thing. You can take your mouse and grab a portion of the graph if you want to. It will show you just that portion. I'm going to try to, oh, I didn't mean to do that, sorry. I'm refreshing. I didn't say I was really good at this. I said I could sometimes do it right. This is what it looks like when you first come in. Again, I double clicked on total. If I double click on total, if I hover over that line, you'll see the actual member count as you hover in different months. So for example, September 22 of last year, 279,928 is the total member count at that point. And you can hover over it and get different amounts as you go along the line, as you can see. So that's kind of fun. If you wanted to focus on expansion, you can grab the expansion folks. Let me add those to the mix here. You're seeing the total line up above and the graph of the expansion as it started a little bit later, as we know, started just in 2020. Again, you can hover over the expansion and get those numbers as well, which is kind of a fun feature. So the data is there. There's a data table up here on the left-hand side. You can actually go and look at all the data. This will look a little bit more like what you're used to seeing in the past reports we've done. But the interactive graph gives all sorts of fun to let you play and see what it is you want to see. I'll double click on that PCN one because it is, for me, it's kind of interesting anyways. I'll try to double click on it. It doesn't want to do it, of course. You never want to demo this stuff when you're not the expert. You can, as you see, I'm turning off the other graphs. They're slowly going away as I pick on the graphs I don't want to show and display. So here's PCN at the bottom, this yellow line. Those little bumps in the graph are where we used to do open enrollment. So you can see we'd open enrollment, the enrollment would increase, it would decrease over time, et cetera. And you can see the end of the program there at the end of December 2019 with the final counts. So this is the new graph. It is available online today. It does probably need some enhancement. You'll notice the labels before someone else calls it out. I'll go ahead and call it out. Adult does not mean much, but to those in the know of Medicaid, that's the parent, caretaker, relative population. So you can see that population is added in there as well. And Brian promised to answer all the hard questions here. So if there are any on the graph, he is here. So let me turn some time to him.
Well, and yeah, thank you, Jeff. I mean, recognizing that this is an improvement over where we've been with those pretty dry PDF documents. So we aim to continue to improve this over time. Also, I thought it would be helpful just to show people, if you don't have the link, how you arrive at this dashboard from our homepage. And Jeff, if you're not prepared for that, I can walk people through that real quick. But maybe we do that after, well, or you're already underway. So yes, under administration, then administration home. At the top, there may be a couple ways to get to it, but it's that bottom right button there.
Okay,
Also,
with the data, let me just ask a quick question. You've spoken, Jeff, at least, to the duplication or inaccuracy of some of the historical reporting, yet for many of us, that's still the baseline of what we've been familiar with for however long we've tracked this. Do the data represented in this chart now go back and fix all of the previous enrollment data? So if I were to look at, say, a report from 6 months ago and then compare it to this report, whatever the inaccuracies or duplications are would be removed on the online report, and then we could try to establish a new baseline based on this information from our previous data. Okay,
that's correct. Yes.
All right. Sorry, Brian, you were elaborating. Continue with your elaboration.
No, I appreciate the question. Just one last thing, and I think, Jeff, you were prepared to show it right then, is just notice those 4 top links. This, if you do recall from the enrollment reports that existed from before, we had 4 different views of members, either by cases or persons or children's and adults. So there's some intersection there, like child is a data series, and you could also look by children and look across multiple data series, including foster care, medically needy child, etc. But we welcome you looking at this, presenting any questions you may have, and we'd be happy to answer those questions.
Okay, looks great. Thank you for the update and sharing that with us. That's very helpful. Does anybody else have any more questions on this before we let Jeff get on with?
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
Michael, this is Alan. Just a quick one, and I'm not sure that I even understand the issue all that well, but I've heard several people say that the end of certain benefits under the earned income tax credit is changing their income, or how the income is being reported or acknowledged by Medicaid, and it's causing them to unexpectedly jump into new spend down amounts. Can you, Jeff, or anybody else address that, or is this just kind of a true one-off?
I can address that a little bit. So the earned income tax credits actually should not be impacting cases. We look at gross income when we're looking at the income levels for Medicaid. So if you made $100,000 in a year, for example, before taxes, that's what the number we're using divided by 12 and getting your income for the month. When you get a tax refund or an earned income tax credit, that's money back that you essentially have paid into the system. So it's not counted. Now, that said, the money can count as an asset if there's an asset test on the program you're on in the following month, if it's a state earned income tax credit. If it's a federal tax credit, you actually have 12 months to spend that money, and otherwise it will count at the end of the 12-month period. So it's a little bit of a nuanced policy, and one that I actually happily had to look at this morning for a different reason. So I'm glad you asked the question today. But it really should not be impacting Medicaid month to month.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay, thank you, Alan, and Jeff, thank you for your response. If no other questions for Jeff, we'll let him go, and then we'll move on to our HEDIS and CAP measures report from Greg Trollen.
All right. Doesn't sound like there's any additional questions for Jeff. Thank you. Good afternoon. I don't get as much airtime as Jeff or some of the other folks. So for those of you that don't know me, my name's Greg Trollen. I'm the Office Director for Managed Healthcare in the Division of Integrated Healthcare. Cameron, who's our quality measures and quality manager, is going to be bringing up our report. This report was sent out to the MAC members just recently. So we're going to walk through this particular report and then answer any questions that folks may have related to the information.
All right. I'll take it away.
All right. So the first thing you'll notice is, sorry, Cameron, what was that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, apologies. So the first thing you'll notice is just on this particular report, we do have a watermark for a draft. So our report usually includes the national averages related to the specific measures that we've identified and that the plans report on. However, just due to some contracting issues that arose between our department and NCQA, we don't have the national averages yet, although we anticipate having those hopefully very soon. And once we do, what we're going to do is update this particular report with those national averages and then recirculate it to the MAC as well as other individuals. So starting out So with respect to what it is that we require the plans to report on, there's two elements to this. One is called HEDIS, which is the Healthcare Effectiveness Data and Information Set. So this is a set of measures. Actually, it includes up to around 90 different measures. However, we don't require a report out on all of those. We've selected 16 specific HEDIS measures that we require the ACOs to report on an annual basis. And HEDIS measures are managed and sort of promulgated by the NCQA, which is the National Committee for Quality Assurance. And they have very strict specifications related to how these measures are supposed to be both reported, how they're calculated, and then because of the specificity and because there's such a large number of health plans that participate in reporting HEDIS measures, it provides an opportunity for people to evaluate plan performance in specific areas and helps consumers as well as entities just understand how well plans are performing on any given area. Let's see, a couple things related to HEDIS measures. HEDIS measures fall into one of two categories. They're either administrative or they're hybrid. And administrative means that you can calculate the measure just based on claims and encounters information. And hybrid measures are those measures that rely on both administrative data, but also on medical, clinical information as part of rounding out the performance on a measure. So as we scroll down, Cameron, and just talk about our second area of measurement, which has to do with CAHPS. So CAHPS is the Consumer Assessment of Health Plans and Systems. And the difference here with CAHPS is that it's based on survey data. And specifically, it focuses on patient experience and not so much, for example, on patient satisfaction. If you look at those bulleted items there, those are the 8 measures that we currently capture and have the plans report on. And CAHPS is administered by our Office of Healthcare Statistics. They manage the CAHPS survey process for the department. And then one thing you'll note is as we're looking through this report, you're going to see, particularly in the CAHPS area, some date spans that are missing or appear to be missing. Up until recently, we were reporting and gathering information on a staggered year basis between adults and children. And a few years ago, we adopted getting annual information for both adults and kids. So as you look at some of those trend lines on some of the CAHPS measures, you're going to notice just some breaks in years. And that's just due to the fact that we were on off years getting child information and then on a subsequent year getting adult information. Okay. One other thing to note is that when we're looking at the HEDIS measures, you're also going to start to see some comparisons on measures between the ACO health plans and the UMIC plans. So UMIC stands for Utah Medicaid Integrated Care, and our UMIC managed care plan penetration right now is 5 counties: Weber, Davis, Salt Lake, Utah, and Washington. The UMIC plans blend physical and behavioral health services under one umbrella, and the UMIC plans are actually operationalized by the current ACOs who also run and manage our physical health care plans. So let's see. And then one thing to note when you're looking at the data is that the UMIC plans currently only serve the expansion population. So our expansion population right now is a little bit under 20% of our overall Medicaid enrollment. So just understand that when you're looking at the UMIC plan information, you're looking at those expansion adults, and you're not going to see like any kids information related to that. Okay. A couple other things. We can start just walking through measures, but we're also going to see just some gaps. And gaps, like for example, a plan may not have reported on a particular measure. And one of the things that we found, throughout the process, particularly when we have a smaller population that we're looking at, is that those gaps can be generated by a sample size that's too small in order for it to be considered valid. And so we may be missing information that way. The other thing is that in some cases, you'll see some sort of wild fluctuations in some measures. And sometimes that's just due to the fact that the sample size is very small. And so any changes in that sample size can have considerable changes in the actual performance on a particular measure. Okay, so looking at childhood immunizations, one other thing to note here is that the information that you're seeing, so for example, under 2022, that's actually reported information for January through December of 2021. So one of the things with HEDIS is that we're really sort of looking in arrears in some ways. And if you think about 2021, again, we're still in that time period dealing with COVID and the effects of COVID, just I think on the healthcare system and healthcare delivery, access, and utilization. If you also notice just the blue line that cuts across the various years is just the national average. One other thing to note, as you're looking at this information, if you look at the legend on the far right, the percentages, you're going to notice that sometimes those percentage bands change. So they may be broader or narrower. And we do that intentionally just so that we can show differences, particularly when the differences are relatively small between plans. And so just note when you're looking through, and as we go through these measures, to note, so what are we looking at as far as the percentage changes on the left-hand side? Okay, you can go to the next one, Cameron. Okay, well child visits for the first 30 months. This has been an important focus for us. It's the measure itself changed a bit, just so that it included 6 of the visits for the first 15 months, and then an additional 2 visits from 15 to 30. Yep, thanks, Rachel, for the comment. Yeah, I think one thing, if just with respect to well child visits, but also immunizations, for those of you who are probably aware that the department had kicked off an immunization campaign to really encourage parents and kids to get back into clinics to get immunizations and get up to date. That's the name of the campaign, up to date. And so within the context of that, our efforts around well child visits kind of have a similar emphasis, which is getting kids back into offices to get caught up on well child visits as best as they can. All right, next one, Cameron. Adolescent immunizations. The next item is BMI assessments for kids and adults. All right, next. So this is where we start looking at some comparisons between the ACO physical health plans and the UMIC plans. So ACOs report on 16 HEDIS measures. The UMICs report on a total of 13. Eight of those measures for the UMIC plans are the same as those that are measured for ACOs. But the UMIC plans also have 5 unique measures. Again, because the UMIC plans are charged with managing behavioral health services, we have 5 unique measures that address that end of the spectrum. Again, this would be where we start to see some of the reporting potentially. For example, in 2021, we were absent UMIC reporting for this particular measure for Healthy U for the UMIC plan. Yes, Michael.
Hi, Greg. So as I'm just looking at these, obviously each year in each situation across the plans is a little different, but I was just looking quickly at each individual health plan or ACO and its associated UMIC plan. And in every case, the UMIC plan slightly outperforms the base ACO enrollment plan. And I'm just wondering if you've had a chance to look at that and see if there is some reason for that, because they're maintaining physical and behavioral health enrollment and overall maybe having more luck getting people in for physical health screenings because they might have contact with them on a different touch point on the behavioral health side. But I just find that to be one of the interesting points as I look at that display. Any comments would be appreciated.
Yeah, and that's a good observation. I think as we scroll through here, one of the things that we notice, so this is the second reporting year for UMIC, so we kind of are getting some trending information, which I think is particularly useful. And we'll just double check this as we scroll down, but I think there's a couple measures where actually the ACOs perform better than the UMIC plans. So as we look at this, and again, our goal, and we've heard this certainly anecdotally, and we know this just from across the board, that when managing the full spectrum of care for individuals just provides additional opportunities to address a wider range of issues that a member may be experiencing. And because they have a single point of contact, I think it will facilitate improved access to care and referrals to appropriate care across the spectrum. So I think part of our goal with the UMIC program was to be able to get information that shows how these plans are performing. And again, we're looking at the adult population in specific, right? Because it's limited to expansion adults.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Postpartum care, prenatal care. You want to scroll down, Cameron? Are you there, Cameron?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm still here. So
Was
we're on
that?
lower
Yeah, you
back-
want to scroll down? Sorry.
Oh, I am. Can you see it? We're on lower back pain.
I don't know. Am I frozen? Are you guys seeing? Oh,
No,
there
it
we
was
go.
frozen.
It was frozen. Now we're caught up. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So here's one of those areas, Michael, where it looks like, right, a UMIC is slightly lower than ACO. Although again, we're looking at a bandwidth, and we're not looking at a huge amount of variability. If you were to say they look like they're about equal when it comes to performance, but in each case, there's a slight decrease for the UMIC plans in the most current reporting year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this one, you're just going to see where things weren't reported or they haven't been reported historically. Again, part of this was just due to numbers. I think one of the things that's helping to improve just the reportability on these particular measures, because the sample sizes for these tend to be very low, is that we just have so many more individuals enrolled in Medicaid right now. So we have that working in our favor as far as our ability to look collectively at some measures that under circumstances where our enrollment would be significantly lower than it is now, we may run into similar gaps in information moving forward once we've gotten through the process of reviews and managing our unwinding process. All right, next one, Cameron.
All right. Can you see it? Can you see URI?
Yeah.
Respiratory infection. Okay. Just making
Yep,
sure
that one came up.
Okay. So high blood pressure.
All right. Yeah, so let's just kind of running. So we have controlling high blood pressure. Let's kind of speed up. I know this meeting is supposed to get over at 4, so. Again, measures, right? A1C testing, diabetes, 2 measures related to that, including eye exams related to diabetes. preventative health services. So this one, I mean, you can see in this one, there's quite a dip there. Presumably this would be part of the impact of COVID and people avoiding getting care. And now we're just going to walk through the measures that we have just specifically for the UMIC plans. Emergency follow-up for mental illness, as well as the next set has to do with substance use. All right. And then CAPS measures. One thing that we've heard from some of the plans is that surveys. Yep. Yeah, that's a great point. So just let me finish that sentence, and then Stephanie, I'll just give a couple minutes related to your question. So the specific surveys, one of the things that we've noted over time is that survey responses are decreasing. And so as our survey numbers decrease, there's some concerns that the applicability, or I should say the generalizability of those sample sizes is more questionable with respect to plan performance and specifically on the CAPS measures. So I'm going to let folks have an opportunity on the MAC just to review the CAPS measures, but I did want to just address Stephanie, your question in the chat. So one of the, I'd say just reflecting back on what Jennifer Strohecker had said. So part of what we're really looking at is how do we maybe approach quality in a different way? Because with HEDIS and CAPS, again, HEDIS measures are in arrears. And so we're looking at information related to performance that's matured. And one of the things we want to do is say, how can we more immediately review quality and make decisions, both with respect to what we should be looking at, how we measure it, and then also how do we just really emphasize quality from a contracting standpoint and increase just the accountability on the quality side. So I think what we're really looking to do is to actually look at our quality as a whole, but really in the managed care world, we're looking to add some additional resources in our office that have an emphasis on quality, that we look at how we can construct our contracts for measures that provide us more immediacy in performance information, but also are really clear things that we want to emphasize with respect to quality. And then how do we construct our contracts so that there's an emphasis on that performance, but also there's a level of accountability in those contracts that ensures that there's efforts made in that direction. So with respect to this, it flows into what Jen had mentioned about really having a quality focus for what it is we're doing. Number two is to revamp the managed care quality strategy that we have, which involves really bringing a variety of stakeholders together to talk about what's meaningful, what we should be doing, and what we should be focusing on. So I think that's the direction that we want to go. Historically, our contracts have really focused on the national averages, particularly with respect to the HEDIS measures. But again, we want to revisit. We don't see that HEDIS goes away or that we don't report this, but that we start tying plan accountability for quality in some different ways. That makes sense.
Great. All right. Well, thank you, Greg and Cameron, for displaying this information for us. Again, this was sent out yesterday, I believe, or some point earlier today. I don't remember the exact time, Sharon, when you sent that out, but there is information, lots of it to digest. I think we will probably have a follow-up discussion on this a little bit, to Stephanie's point, to see again on the department's overall quality strategy and what opportunities there are for improvement as we look to continue to evaluate this and see what reporting limitations and other challenges the plans have that maybe across the provider continuum there might be opportunities to work on that. Sorry, got a couple of notes pop up here I want to just read before we end the meeting. Some of these measures are dependent on plans. Yes, very good, Rachel, and we're understand. Okay, thank you for the comments.
Close out.
What's that?
I was telling Cameron he could close out.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well, again, thank you for your presentation. We'd like to thank all the members of the MAC and the public who participated in the meeting and all the presentations from staff that we've been able to go through. And we will have an informal meeting in February where it will be more just an update from the department on progress through the legislative session, and then we'll plan to get back together in March for a more traditional meeting for our presentations and deliberation on topics. So
Michael?
thank you all. Yes.
May I just ask a quick question? The last time, I think, I don't even know, it was before COVID. We had that at the Capitol. Is it still going to be online only? I just want to know because I'm spending most of my days at the Capitol right now. So.
Yeah, we'll get some more detail, but usually there's an in-person meeting room at the Capitol and then a broadcast for people to call in and listen to. So
wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you for your time and participation, and we'll look forward to getting together next month. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.